Welcome to the Nuts and Bolts of Real Estate podcast. My name is Joe Bauer, and I'm here with my co-host, Julie Clark. Julie, how you doing today?
I am doing good today, Joe. I put on a kind of a Christmassy shirt today to kind of celebrate the holiday spirit since we're dropping this right before Christmas. Where are you at today?
I'm still in Kauai for the rest of the week before I come back to Seattle and get frozen.
So what's up with the crazy weather out there? Something's going down out in Kauai.
I think that they just needed things to report on the news because it rained hard for one day. It was 2 inches in one day, so it was quite a bit of rain. But every single time we've come to Hawaii this time of year, which has been it's like our fourth time, it's been super rainy for a small period of time. So it's like 79 to 80 degrees pretty much most of the time.
Well, geez. Well, it's not that bad here, although I'm trying to get to, Tanya, you know our friend Keith Pitch with Loan Depot, right? That's the benefits of getting to know everybody and having this network. Keith just purchased an Airbnb in Sandpoint, Idaho, over at Schweitzer. So I just bought myself a new snowboard this week. Yeah. Little gift to myself. Yeah. And when I was actually shopping for boots for the girls, I decided to buy myself something instead. You know how it goes. And headed over to Schweitzer right after Christmas, except I wrecked my car. And I need to make sure that I got some wheels to get over there. So it's been a really fun week this past week. And you guys are probably the best part of my week so far. So let's jump into it. I'm going to get my cheat sheet notes up here. And we are going to jump into it. So you guys who hang with us, and if you haven't been hanging with us, you need to start hanging out with us on Thursdays at our weekly meetup. It's super awesome. It's just an open discussion. But we've been talking a lot lately about DADUs and ADUs at our weekly Thursday meetup. And today we're going to continue that conversation and that discussion. We're going to get to pick the brain of Mr. Derek Harms. Derek's an investor and agent at Compass in San Diego, and he has been killing it with his value add investing. In fact, we might be his good luck charm today. He just told us he's on the verge of getting a sweet deal today, and he's waiting he might even hang up on us because his deal's so sweet that he might get the call during our show here today. But we're lucky enough to have him join us and share his experience and knowledge with us. And the great thing, like I said, about our weekly meetup group is that everyone participates, kind of like a collective genius of sorts. If you guys haven't heard about the real collective genius, that's actually a real thing that you need to check out. So credit to those guys. But, everybody participates. And my co-host today, Tanya Spivey, is the one that introduced us here to Derek. So thanks, Tanya. Tanya's a broker at Keller Williams in Seattle. And we appreciate that. So I was joking with these guys. We've got like the United Nations of real estate here today because Derek's at Compass, Tanya's at Keller Williams, and yours truly here at EXP. So bringing the goodness to our friends. Let's jump into it.
Thanks so much for having us today, guys. So let's start, Derek, with sharing how you got into the real estate biz.
Awesome. Thank you guys for having me. I really appreciate it. I think there's so much to be said about putting real estate minds together and then sharing it with the general public. So via podcast or a meetup group, which you host, Julie, which is cool because I too host the North San Diego Real Estate Investor Association. And it's been invaluable as to what it's meant to me and then those that come, our members and guests. So I think what you guys are doing is really cool. I'm grateful to be a part of it today. Thank you, Tanya. I really appreciate you setting this up. All right. So to get into it, the elevator pitch. So I've been doing this now since 2010. Back in 2010, I bought a duplex as a foreclosure in a small little town in California called Barstow. And I bought it for $22,000. And at the time, it was all the money I had and all the money I could borrow. And I was bartending at the time. And I bought this property and would drive out to it every day. I lived 3 hours away. I would swing hammers and fix it up and then drive back and bartend at night. And then I did that for a while, ended up hiring a helping hand to help me get through the gates on that, and eventually fixed it up, put tenants in it, learned how to be a landlord for a little while, and then sold it to a regular at my bar. And I sold it for $52,000. So, I walked away with a little over 20 grand on the deal. And that was more money than I had made in like 6 months of bartending. So I was young and exuberant and just said, screw bartending. I'm giving this real estate investing thing a try. And then from there, I went to Florida. I learned how to buy properties at tax deed auctions and ended up buying a property online, not really knowing what I was doing. I got extremely lucky and ended up buying the worst house in the best neighborhood. I did my diligence, of course, but I got lucky in the fact that I didn't know that the house had over $100,000 worth of code violations against the property. And because this house had been a neighborhood nuisance for about a decade. And luckily, I went into the county commissioner's office with my tail between my legs and just said, hey, I'm new to this and I bought this house and I'm willing to fix this house up, but I can't pay any of these liens. And he made me a deal and he said, all right, son, as long as you clean this thing up, I'm sick and tired of having to deal with this house. I won't make you pay a dime. So sure enough, I fixed it up as fast as I could. And the news actually had a hold of this property because it was such a nuisance. And so they found out someone bought it and was renovating it. And they had this news story on it. And it was this huge blessing in disguise that it all worked out this way. So that kind of gave me the catapult I needed to realize how much I really enjoyed taking the eyesore of the community and turning it into the envy. And, and then let me finish this thought. So then I ended up buying a couple mobile home parks across the country, Oklahoma, Florida, to name a couple spots, learned how to do the mobile home park thing for a while, use seller financing to buy those and then actually sell those as well. I carried paper on those. So I got this whole experience in real estate early on. I got a lot of boots on the ground experience, hands-on experience. I was working on septic tanks. I was doing what I needed to do to really learn how to do this. So when I came back to San Diego, I had this, at least somewhat of an understanding of the components of properties and how to make them work properly and how to not get taken advantage of. And then in 2012, full throttle back here in San Diego, I was a licensed agent as well as an investor and started hitting the ground running on flipping single family houses in San Diego. And now that's kind of morphed into flipping single family houses, buying and acquiring rental units, ADUs, development, and lending, et cetera. Now I run the real estate investor group here as well. So it's been kind of this whole journey that's got it to where it is now. And then not to mention, I'm also an agent with Compass. So, we still have a pretty solid deal source and, a lot of revenue generate from that. So that is the elevator pitch in actually kind of a long-winded answer, but I think that that's very comprehensive, kind of helps everyone understand kind of how it got to where it's at today.
Awesome. That is a good story. That is, that is interesting. I want to know though, what made you, when you were the bartender back in the beginning, what made you go, maybe I should go buy this place in Barstow? Were you thinking about real estate investing then, or did you even know that was a thing you were going to do? Why did you do that?
So at the time, my dad had bought some properties and he was still full-time in the motion picture industry. And you can see behind me, those Emmys are his. And nice. He was full-time in the motion picture industry, but always had this understanding and idea that real estate had this extremely high ceiling and was a huge wealth generator. So he definitely wet the whistle, so to speak, early for me. But I'll never forget it. I went to a Tony Alvarez seminar back in 2010, and he was like an REO investor. That was his deal, or he would have relationships with asset managers and agents, et cetera. And he would buy a lot of bank-owned properties. And it was a 3-day course, and he had this manual. I still have it right there. I mean, I look at it from time to time. And after the seminar, I hopped the phones, just like he said, and I started calling agents, and a lot of agents gave me the whole like, hey man, you sound like a script and that you just went to a training and you don't know what you're doing. And I said, you're right, but you know, in my early 20s and I don't care. I want to learn how to do this. And I found one agent that was receptive, and she's like, hey, I got this deal out here, come take a look. And sure enough, you know, I made an offer and got it, and the rest was history.
Nice. Awesome stuff. Yeah, good stuff. Well, let's jump into a little bit. We're going to focus today on kind of the niche that you're in there. I think Tanya told me you guys call them granny flats down there. We up here call them DADUs or ADUs. DADU meaning detached accessory dwelling unit. Is that right? Are you guys calling those granny flats down there?
There's a lot of terms for them, but if you're going to submit to the city plans, then there are accessory dwelling units, so ADUs.
Right, because I guess it wouldn't be politically correct with the city to call them granny flats, but
yeah,
okay,
I mean,
cool.
yeah, who knows what's politically correct these days is kind of crazy out there, but yeah, so accessory dwelling units, we have junior ADUs as well, and you know, you can have a combination of multiple different ways to combine them.
What's a junior ADU?
So a junior ADU is essentially an extra unit you can apply to a property where you are submitting plans for an accessory dwelling unit. The junior ADU, though, is not meant to have a full kitchen. It's meant to have just a kitchenette. It's meant to be attached to the main structure, and it's not meant to be rented out. And it's typically meant for the owner occupant to have like family and someone else live in there. But there's no real enforcement of this stuff. Like sometimes they'll make you deed restrict it and commit to this, but there's no real way to enforce who lives there and what they pay in rent and et cetera. So it's still kind of the Wild West in how a lot of this is being interpreted. And I'm sure we'll get into that today, because there's been, at least in California, San Diego, especially, we've seen a lot of new legislation come through, and it has to be interpreted at the local level. And we're still not exactly sure how that's going to go down. But yeah, junior ADUs, this is a smaller version of an ADU with those restrictions I meant.
Gotcha. So you yourself, you're doing what, garage conversions, and tell us what a typical deal looks like for you when you're doing a value add with extra space. What is it that you're typically doing? You know, when I mean extra space, that means a garage conversion, or you know, I don't know, you're building something in the backyard, a complete detached unit that you build new in the backyard. What does it look like for you?
So my favorite deals, and the ones I've been focusing on lately, are ones that typically have two components. One that has an existing structure that I can convert to an ADU. It's much easier in San Diego County to get an existing structure through the gates, permitted all the way through, rather than ground up. And so I prefer to have that, number one. And then number two is I want the main structure, whether that's a house or a duplex or triplex or whatever it is that I'm buying, I want there to be a reconfiguration component involved in there. So for instance, you know, I bought one in North Park, which is an urban metro spot here in San Diego. And it was a 2-1, a 1-1, and a detached garage. And so I reconfigured the 2-1 to be a 3-2, reconfigured the 1-1 to be a 2-1, added laundry to each one of those, and then converted the garage to be a 1-1. And so, you know, I turned a 2-1 into a 1-1, into a 3-2, a 2-1, and a 1-1. And the value, I mean, I doubled, more than doubled the price of the property, and I bought it for, you know, 800 and change, and, you know, it appraised at north of 1.6. So, you know, to me, that's where the real value pop, you know, you get that equity jump is by reconfiguring what you have. And then
Hey guys, it's Julie here with a quick break from the show to discuss an opportunity some of you may have interest in, which is to work more closely with me. On almost a daily basis, I get calls from investors and brokers, both new and experienced, asking me for guidance or advice. I love helping you guys out, and it keeps me on my toes too. So with that said, I wanted to let you know that I have a private broker coaching community called the VIP Education Community. And the best part is that it's 100% free. That's right, it's free to join. So Whether you're a traditional broker or a broker investor, my VIP education community offers personalized one-on-one coaching from not just me, but also from my experienced broker friends with expertise in all disciplines of real estate and real estate investing. We'll teach and share our modern marketing strategies, our tech and lead generation resources, plus teach you how to identify or offer up opportunities for yourself or for your clients using techniques such as seller financing, lease options, land entitlement deals, BRRRR investing, flipping, multifamily or commercial coaching, whatever you like. We've got it all covered for you. The future of real estate is changing fast, and to stay in the game, it's time to learn about all the options you can offer your buyer and seller clients, as well as, if you want, learn how to use those skills to grow your own real estate portfolio. If you'd like more details about joining my VIP education community, reach out to me at julie@seattleinvestorsclub.com or text me at 206-910-2985 or just send me a Facebook message. My new favorite phrase is community equals confidence. So let's navigate the future of real estate together. Now, back to the show.
Okay.
So, hey guys, we just had a little technical difficulty and we are back in action here. Where we left off, Derek, was that you were telling us about a deal that you had purchased in the 800s or so, low eights, where you took a 2x1 and converted it to a 3x2. The 1x1 converted it to a 2x1, plus did a detached garage conversion. That's where we left off. So that sounds awesome. Let's talk more about that. And did you end up keeping that one, or did you resell it, or you still own it?
I still own it, and I refinanced it actually probably like 3 or 4 months ago. And right now with rates the way they are, and even the new non-QM stuff is still readily available. It wasn't for a minute after when COVID first hit, but now it is. It's back in action, and I'm getting high LTVs with low rates, and I've been pretty amazed with the non-owner occupied financing we've been able to do. But to finish the thought on why I like properties like that is, you have so many different ways to increase the value. The reconfiguration of the existing stuff is there. Reconfiguring the yard to now have all separate yard spaces, reconfiguring the parking, and now adding an extra unit to what was just a garage. And you turned a property that didn't have very much into something that has a lot of sources of income, and it can command top of market rents because of the location. And I was able to pull all my cash out on that deal that I bought or that I used. And so essentially, it's almost an infinite return when you start calculating. You don't have any money in the deal, and it's spitting off a lot of cash flow. So those are my favorite. They're not easy to find, but then again, that's why we all do what we do and have the relationships we have, is because we know how to shake trees and pick the fruit.
Sure. So that was a duplex that you bought with a detached garage. Is that it?
Correct.
Okay. So, and then what happens with the parking situation? Are you building above the garage, or you're taking the actual garage space, and so you have to come up with plan B or just go to street parking, or what's the story there?
It's really a case-by-case basis and what is already on site. But for this particular property, we actually had, and why I really enjoy with ADU properties having alley access, because you have street access and you have alley access. So you have multiple ways to get vehicles in there. And this one was on the alley. And so we had a driveway coming in off the alley and one off the street. So there was complete ample parking without having any other garage spaces. So it was really easy to just convert the garage to habitable living space and have it plenty of parking. And we actually increased the parking from what was there because of the way they had it configured. There was a way that we actually extended a driveway. It was a 1-car driveway, but there was a lot of space. So we just poured extra concrete and made a little turnout and actually increased parking. So we were a net zero loss for parking. And in San Diego, as long as you're within a mile of public transportation, then you do not have to add parking to your ADUs. And I'm sure it's probably similar in Seattle.
So would that deal have worked for you if it didn't have the alley? Would you have still done the deal if it wasn't on the alley? Because, I think everybody's looking for that alley access stuff when we're talking on this subject matter. Would you have done the deal without the alley access?
I think so, because of the location. it's an A location in San Diego, and people will figure it out where to park their cars, and they're around this zone. I mean, this was a block from Balboa Park, and a few blocks from all the main restaurants and bars and stuff that's in this little area. So, I always like to say, if you can get an A location, I'll take a little bit less of a return for that kind of a location if I'm going to plan on hanging on to it for forever. Because even in down markets, that's where people will stay and want to go, is those good locations.
Right. Locations, right? I think a lot of people make the mistakes of trying to go cheap, buying in the fringe war zones, and then they just end up paying for it, right?
Sure. Yeah. The numbers can look sexy, from a cash flow perspective, but can you collect rent, and can you actually,
right.
Can you do it? Is that sustainable?
Exactly. There's more to it than just how it pencils on the paper, when you're doing your underwriting in regards to all that stuff. But let me jump back into it. So on those conversions, you had a duplex with a detached garage. Where did you add? How did you get a third bedroom in the 2x1? Was there like a basement? Are these flats, or was there like basement space you finished, or what's the story?
So it was an existing single story raised foundation property. And those are my favorite to reconfigure, because, all the plumbing and electrical, you can just throw a man underneath the raised foundation and have him relocate everything. But we do this on every house. So every house we flip, every property is, we go in and my designer will get everything immediately onto a CAD program. And Tanya, I've shown you these, this in depth on some of our projects, but even on just a normal flip, we'll get everything on a CAD program, and we'll start moving walls. We'll start playing with the design and seeing what the best use for the space is, and really maximize every foot inside that floor plan. And I personally am under the assumption that people will pay for quality use of space. And so even on a normal 3-bedroom, 2-bath house flip, we'll do our best to reconfigure everything, add a master closet, make sure the master bathroom is usable, add a pantry, do the things that people really want. And so the front house was only 950 square feet. And that's not very, very much to get a 3-bedroom, 2-bath property in. It's a little tight. But when you start asking yourself the question, what will a tenant pay more for? Will they pay more for a 3-2 that has the extra options for a bedroom, maybe for an office or for a roommate? And even though their ensuite master bath is somewhat small, or a 2-2 where you have a little bigger room, we think that there's more value in having that third bedroom. So we'll do it every time, especially on a rental.
And so you have like an architect or somebody, architect engineer, as part of your go-to team on your direct dial for these sort of things, right?
Yes and no. So my designer, she's not an actual architect, but I'd say she probably knows more than some of them, especially when it comes to design and reconfiguration. So her job is to help design the floor plans and value engineer it in a way it's not going to break the bank, and then I'll bring my engineer in if we are moving anything structural or have to do anything on the foundation. I used to not do that. And then sometimes it's like when you move a wall and you put a post and a beam in, like you can over engineer it just based off our experience. We know what needs to go in. But with that said, for me, it's like, for $750 now, just getting an insurance policy of knowing the exact calcs and building them to spec is just worth way more than $750 will cost to have. But yeah, so the designer, engineer when needed, contractor for sure. I always get out there when we're running these things, but I'm sure you guys are in the same level where, you can walk a house now and, almost down to like 2 or 3% off of what the budget's going to be for this house. And
sure.
It's pretty rare now where I can walk a house and I'm not almost spot on to what it'll cost, is because we know our contractors' numbers almost better than they do now.
Well, we want to give some value add back to people today. So I think there's a little golden nugget here. So you said $750. What are you paying for with $750? Because I think people think that it's extremely expensive to get this kind of review and insurance policy, as we say, done. What is it for $750 that you're able to confirm? that you said is worth spending? What are you spending it on?
So our structural engineer will come out to the property anytime I'm moving any load bearing framing on the property, or if there are any sort of foundation issue. So even if you're opening up a kitchen wall or making the master bathroom or bedroom bigger, but you're moving load bearing framing, it's just so important to have a set of trained engineering eyeballs look at that for you. And what they do is come out. It doesn't take them long. It takes them like 30 minutes. They'll look in the attic to see if it's a truss system or conventionally framed, whatever it is. They'll make some calcs, measurements, and within a week you'll get your report back, and it'll tell you exactly how to frame that movement and when you're reconfiguring. And when you do that, if you are going to resell the property, it's worth so much to just include that in the disclosure packet and say, hey, here's the engineering, we built it to spec, even if you don't pull permits. And a lot of times on a normal home renovation we won't. I mean, it's just nightmare getting through the city here. But that's why even more important, if you're not pulling permits, to have engineering. So it's not like, okay, great, you remove the load bearing walls and replace them, but how do we know what you did? And so I think for $750, and I say $750, but that's kind of an investor rate here in San Diego. But if you're doing this in wherever you're listening to this today, call your realtors, call your investor friends, call whoever. I'm sure someone has a contact for you that works with investors that gets it and has a rate similar.
I mean, but even if it was $1,500 in the big picture, so what? I mean, for what we're talking about doing with the value add engineering, I mean, I get it. But, I think sometimes when people are getting started or trying to move up a rung, they get so caught up on this, right? Just get going, guys. You get better rates as you do more of these projects. The point is, it's not $10,000, right? It's maybe $750 or $1,500 or whatever the number is. It's worth doing. Have you guys ever had to, speaking of the whole pull the permit, when you're keeping these, right? But I mean, here in our market, if we were going to, go resell the property for whatever reason, which hopefully we're talking right now about keeping those properties, but, permitting is somewhat important and looked at. So the problem is it takes a long time, right? How long would it take down there to if you were to pull the permit to do that work? Would it put a drag on it for?
So it would, yeah. And so it's unfortunately, at least the city of San Diego is understaffed and overworked, and they just have so many projects sitting in a backlog. So for something like that, right, if I'm moving an interior or a couple walls, where it's not that big of a deal, right? This is something we do weekly on all of our projects, and we know how to do this. And if it's engineered properly, but if we wanted to have that city stamp of approval, then it would probably take an extra 3 to 4 months. And it's like, what do you do? Sit around paying carrying costs for that whole time when you can have the whole project done in that time? And so that's why we elect usually not to do that. And it gets a little more interesting if you have square footage on the property that's not permitted. But if, let's just say we're working with a 1,500 square foot 3-2 existing, and we keep it a 1,500 square foot property, but we now maybe make it a 4.2.5 or a 4.3. Well, we didn't add to the footprint of the property. We just reconfigured the interior. I haven't had any issues on appraisals here in San Diego with that type of a thing and permitting. So as long as, and we disclose absolutely everything. But that's why it's more important to have, if you are doing that, an engineering report. But we'll talk to our realtors, or if I'm listing the property, everything is heavily disclosed and everyone knows going into it, eyes wide open, that there's tax roll will not match what the MLS has. But as long as the buyer's okay with it, we haven't had any lending issues or appraisers that aren't counting this extra bed and bath count.
Awesome. Good stuff. Let me see what else we have going on. So that's your go-to is, how about with a detached garage? What's the process to convert that to living space? I mean, do you ever find properties and let's say the duplex or the triplex or the existing structure there is good to go the way you like it, and now you're looking at, okay, I got some value add opportunity on this garage. What would be the first thing you would do on the garage to do you have to check the foundation? Do you need to make sure it has certain footings, or do you know, my understanding is a little bit that when you're doing garage conversions, you got to check something in regards to the footing and foundations or something like that. What's your take on that?
Great point. So I think to highlight that is, if you're looking at fixer properties regularly and you walk into garages, you're going to notice a lot of times that garages have undulated slabs or cracked slabs because they're not built to hold the weight of habitable structure on top, and some of them don't have rebar, et cetera. So absolutely, it's a great point. You definitely need to check your slab a lot of times, especially if you're buying properties built in the 30s, 40s, 50s. A lot of these foundations were built with river rock, and that was just the material that they had back then. So a lot of it's not sustainable for adding a habitable structure on top. So absolutely, grade is so important. And so, this was a garage, not habitable living space. You really got to be cognizant of where water will flow. And ask me how I know, because I made that mistake on an ADU and had a flood after the whole thing was built. And even though we had the site and drainage put into our plan and we submitted to the city, it just wasn't robust enough. And the first major rain we got, sure enough, the whole unit flooded, and I had this whole mess to deal with. And I learned a lot and to apply to my next deals. And I'll get into mistakes in a second, because I think they're critical, especially if you learn from them properly. But in looking at these garages as well, a few other things. So firewalls. So if it's next to the property line, then most likely you're going to have a firewall that butts up against to the adjacent property, where window locations are going to be. So you can't typically have a window on the property line looking into your neighbor's view, especially because it would not be it'd be a firewall issue. And then when you're looking at these things, I think really just envisioning how it would live, and where this person would, where's the best place to go to the bathroom, and where would you put a window, and is anybody looking into it, and how would you incorporate a little private yard space? And so I think there's a lot to just look at when you're going into these things, and hey, where's the sewer line going to go? Can you get one that flows down to the main, or do you have to have a sewage ejector? So I think it's, and this didn't all happen at once for me. I didn't have a checklist. I went through this and made mistakes. I have one multi-unit property I still own that I added an ADU to, and I didn't realize that the sewer line was going to be below grade. And so I had this whole learning experience of how to get a sewer line ejected out to the main, and how much that costs, and the risks and maintenance on it and all that. So, but we got it figured out, and I'm better now because of it.
So we like to go down rabbit holes here. So I'm deep diving on you, because a lot of people are looking for this sort of project, and it's going to be the same complications, whether you're in San Diego or anywhere in the Pacific Northwest, wherever you are, it's going to be the same stuff probably. So does that mean when you're buying these projects that you need to have a due diligence period to investigate all these things in regards to checking this stuff? Or how do you check? How do you check the foundation? What exactly do? You walk in there and you're looking for something specific, or you have to have somebody dig down and check some stuff, or you can tell online, or what?
Great question. And I would say absolutely, if you can get a diligence period, you negotiate that into your purchase agreement every single time if you can. Granted, given the state of the market, at least here locally, every property I bought in the last 3 months has been completely non-contingent. And our inspection period is me and my team walking the property, or even sometimes just our acquisitions director, and just walking the property. And we know now what to look for. And granted, when you do that, you're going to take a little bit of risk, but we're baking that into our offers, and really leveraging the experience we've had on other projects to know what kind of potential booby traps that we're getting into. One of my mentors always told me, and this resonates with me to this day, we literally rehearse it around here regularly. I'd rather regret the deal that I did not do than the one that I did. So if something seems a little too hairy, we'll just walk away and find the next one. I mean, the deal of a lifetime comes once a month. So, it's one of those things. But when I'm on site, it's easy enough to look at at slope and drainage. And you really just think, if you were a bucket of water, where would you flow and how are you going to circumvent that and make sure the property doesn't get wet. When you're looking at a slab, if you walk around the entire exterior, if you can, the perimeter. If there's a perimeter stem wall, take good notes on it. You can see if there's cracks in it. You can see if it looks like river rock. And inside, if you see any sort of waviness or undulation or cracking, well, you can assume you're going to have a budget for concrete work and repair work there. A lot of times on these perimeter stem walls, we're having to underpin huge sections of them. And underpinning, for those that don't know what that means, is essentially you have to excavate around the existing footing, which is the concrete slab that the property sits on, and you have to essentially underpin it with more robust concrete and rebar to give it more strength. And so we haven't seen too many where we haven't had to do some sort of structure addition in terms of help giving extra strength to the foundation. So, when you're looking at these 70-year-old garage slabs, you got to think that you're probably going to have to put a few bucks into it.
So what's a few bucks? How much does it cost to do that on an average garage size?
So, okay, if we're talking like a 2-car garage, and those are averaging, anywhere between 350 to 400 square feet, at least, if you're doing a 20 by 20 or 20 by 15 or some in those realms, I think we're looking at anywhere between maybe $8 grand to $20,000 on that type of concrete issue, depending on how good or bad it is. And ideally, less, we'd rather do the least if possible. But these are scenarios where I don't skimp on foundation. We don't cut corners at all in our model. And I think that's why we've got such a good reputation, is we do really quality work. But in this specifically, to anyone listening, like, you don't skimp on foundation, and plumbing, sewer, and electrical. I mean, it's just like those things, if you don't do them right initially, they will come back to haunt you.
So what are you, let me ask you, are you only looking for garages? This is rabbit hole stuff. Are you only looking for 2-car garages so you have more space? Obviously, because that would be too small, right? Or like one large 1-car garage. I don't know. Is there any rules for you on your investments in that regard, on when you're doing your due diligence of, okay, this, opportunity can stay on my desk, this one goes because the garage is not large enough? What's the minimum garage size you need, I guess, is a better way to say it.
So we've actually done really cool ADU conversions in 1-car garages. They're a studio, so it's a studio, but you can make them cute and really functional. Like, in a 1-car garage, we can get a studio bedroom, a kitchenette, a bathroom, and stackable laundry. And it's tight, but as long as like the space around it too, if you can incorporate a dual French door, which we like to do, into an outdoor space with a covered patio kind of thing, you kind of can have an indoor-outdoor feeling and somewhat add to the livable space, even though it isn't under roof structure, but it still kind of is. But it's just outdoor in San Diego. You can live outdoors, 11 months of the year. So no, a 1-car garage we'll definitely look at. And just because it's a 1-car garage doesn't mean you can't add to the footprint of that, right? You can blow out a wall, change the roof structure, and now make it 400 square feet when it originally was only 200. So there's options, and just depending on the lot around it and what else you can do there. But no, we anything with a detached garage, I love to look at. And you would think the cat is out of the bag in why these are valuable properties, but a lot of agents, I gotta say, a lot of agents are really good at being a real estate agent and just don't see through the lens of an investor, or just we'll look at something and see massive opportunity and they just won't see it. And it's not because they're not a good agent or they're not well trained. They're just they just don't have that investor, sixth sense that people have been doing that for a while have.
Exactly. So I'm going to is there a certain configuration also? I mean, is there any 20 by 15, you need it shaped a certain way? I'm trying to do a rabbit deep dive a little bit. And also, does this mean that you're able to buy properties off the MLS, or all of deals you're doing off market to make them work? If you can see these things on the MLS, are you able to pay, for example, your deal that was the duplex with the garage? Can you pay close to full market for that and make it work because of the value add that you're doing, or are you having to still get a steep discount?
So
we know you want a discount.
Of course, yeah, right. That's always the idea. So, but with this model, what I like to do is I like to pay a price for the property that makes sense as is. And because if you buy something speculating that you're going to be able to get this third unit, this ADU, right, and you run into an issue, and it happens. I mean, you never know until the city stamps your final set at the end of this. And granted, we know the laws, we know the setback requirements, we know parking requirements. And so we're able to get pretty close and pretty sure that we will be able to get this through the gates. But if the deal doesn't make sense as is, and we only have this potential bump if we get this through the gates, we usually won't do that deal. So yes, we can buy off the MLS. And I'll take more risk on a deal that is better, more located, or has in an area with the best school districts or something like that, where I know that inherently this asset will trade and I won't lose money. Maybe I won't make any money or as much as I want to, but I'm not going to lose money. So I'll take more risk on those, like hoping for this huge equity bump by getting a permit through the gates like that on ones that I think are safer.
Yeah. Gotcha. That's a good point you brought up on the setbacks. What do the setback rules look like for you in regards to that? Do you ever have to, say I can't do that deal because the setbacks are wrong?
So again, it's so ADUs, at least in San Diego, is still being interpreted, and there are requirements, there are setback rules and regulations, but there are scenarios where setbacks are not needed, in terms of you can build an ADU within an existing setback if it's already an existing structure. So really, when you're doing your diligence, that's why I like these existing structures so much. They're already there, so you will not be infringing on any setbacks because it's already there, just converting something that's there. But we have this really cool program called Scout Red, and I don't think it's anywhere else in the country yet, but San Diego County. So if any of you guys want to just see what this is, it's free. Sign up at Scout Red, but it's a really cool zoning and setback tool that you just plug in an address or an APN, and it'll spit out the local setbacks and how the property is zoned. Is it RS1-7? Is it RM 3-5? And once you start to speak this language and you know what something is zoned, you know immediately how much density this property has. You know what your options are.
Exactly.
And then you can, and so there's always sometimes extenuating circumstances, and I'll explain one really quick. So I own a property in a town called Point Loma here in San Diego, and I have a detached garage on it in the front, and the garage door is literally right in front of the sidewalk, and my neighbor has another front garage door, and we share a common wall to a detached garage, and our homes are behind it. And somehow the city of San Diego is really strict on front setbacks, not on side setbacks or rear, but front is usually a no-no. And they don't like front of properties to have extra accessory dwelling units. But my neighbor got his ADU through the gates, and you can see online in San Diego, you can actually go online and see these approvals, and he got it through the gates and on a front setback. And I don't know how he did it. So we're working right now with talking to him and his architect, so where we're going to submit plans for ours now, but I was kind of letting him get that through and doing all the hard work. And from what I'm told, he was involved in a lawsuit with the city, and he won. And he won and got this approval. So if he can do it, well, I should be able to do it, because it's going to be a mirror image. So I guess my point there is, yes, know your setbacks, know the requirements, know your local ADU ordinances and how they pertain to setbacks. But keep in mind, sometimes there are scenarios like that where there's a reason why you can do something else. So always explore it. Don't just immediately assume the deal's dead.
So are you mainly building on the ground level, or you're not building above or two-story or it's above the garage? Is your main go-to building at ground level with these garages?
That's correct. I prefer to keep single story, and I don't like to do too much to the foundation if I don't have to. And obviously, the more you go up, the more beefed up the foundation has to be to handle the extra weight and safety. But this one in Point Loma, this will be going up above a garage. And so that will be my first one actually going up. And this one by San Diego State, which I mentioned to you, assuming I get that deal, that one will most likely have to go up as well, because I want to maximize the existing garage, but I want to scrape the lid off it and go higher. So I can get the 2,000 square foot main house. You can go half of that and into the maximum ADU size. So having 1,000 square foot extra property next to walking distance to San Diego State it's just going to be worth a lot.
Right. So to clarify for people, when we're saying like you can get 1,000 square feet, right? That is the total living space, not just a footprint of 1,000, meaning, right? I mean, I think people sometimes get confused by, what that means. It means that your footprint might be lower, but your total living space is 500 square feet, or how does that work? You know what I mean? Do you know what I'm asking?
I sure do. And that's a great question. So for us, if you can have up to 50% size of an ADU, 50% of the main structure's living habitable square footage. So in this case, I had a 2,000 square foot house existing already on the lot. I can have up to 50% of that as an ADU. So that would be 1,000 square feet. And that's the maximum. Now, granted, there are a few scenarios where you can wiggle a little bit more. You can pay a higher school fees, sewer fees, and tie-in fees, et cetera. But for the sake of this conversation, that's generally the rule of thumb. About 50% is the maximum size.
So this is bleeding into a really good transition here about like, if you were to pull a list, a prospect of opportunities, right, for this type of scenario, whether that be just an existing home, you got a couple things going on here, right? You got like a duplex or triplex or whatever with a detached garage, or maybe you have an existing home with a detached garage. If we reverse engineer into pulling like list opportunities, right? What would that look like? Maybe it would look like obviously something that has a detached garage of, we'll just pick the sweet spot, like you said, 350 or 400 square feet with an existing home of, it has to be a certain size in order for you to allow you to, like you couldn't have like a detached garage and a 1,200 square foot home, right? Or maybe you could. That would be a 600 square foot. You get what I'm saying?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
So
what's the perfect list look like?
So good question. And I think that's the golden nugget that everybody wants is what's
golden goose.
Yeah, the golden goose. Like, what is the perfect list? So I don't think I know what the perfect list is, but we've actually done this where we'll go in, we use Property Radar, which is our source for data. We'll go in and we'll play around with this and we do the same exact thing. I want a single family property, and I'll do it in a geographic region that is overlaid with that zoning. So Property Radar doesn't have this option, but you can go in and manually, like geographically draw a circle around neighborhoods that have certain zoning. And you can say, all right, I want all single family houses with detached garages that are zoned RM1-7 and haven't been sold in the last 20 years. And they have 25% equity and the owner is 70 years or older. So, and so,
how do you know if the owner is 70 years or older?
Property Radar has that information.
Okay. Or are you just going back, like you're just making an assumption? They actually have that on there now?
They do.
Okay.
And I actually love that list just in general. Like,
yeah,
owner occupied, 70-year-old or more, or 80 even we've done. And you're just talking to people that, may be in a place in their life where they need to sell an asset.
Sure. Okay. So we're looking at detached garage, right? Mm-hmm. Specific zoning, owned for 20 years or more, at least 25%. Lot size. Okay.
Yeah. So I'd say depending on the lot size, it gives you more options, and you can do an alley access. And so you can get as specific as you want. Obviously the more criteria you add to this, the least lower amount of properties that will be. But if you want to get super nichey with it, you can do it.
Yeah. How about house size, existing house size, to control the size of the dadu that you can have, right? Because if we're talking about whatever you guys are all at in your local jurisdiction that you're doing this, you need to understand your limits, right? On that sort of thing. Does that make sense?
It sure does. And, I think too, if you're doing a detached garage though, and let's just say, because you can even separate between 1-car or 2-car detached garage. And so let's say you're only doing 2-car garage on your data set, then for the most part, I like to just keep what's there and not add too much to the footprint, because you get into all kinds of extra stuff with your permitting. And so if you have an existing 2-car garage, it almost doesn't even matter what size your actual house is, because you can convert that space. And at least in San Diego, an average 2-car garage is 350, 400 square feet. There aren't too many detached single family houses that are going to be smaller than 800 square feet, which would be double. So it's that part, if as long as you're getting something with a detached 2-car garage, you have some pretty good options.
Right. So what's it costing you to do a full garage conversion down there? Because I imagine we're not that far off in our pricing.
No. So I have actually some actual numbers from one of my deals. And so, okay. So a two-car garage conversion, this is starting with essentially just a pitched roof and a slab that needed a little work. We're about, I think all in, we're about $110,000, depending on how bad the property is. But we've been averaging. Let me pull up my numbers here. Okay, so yeah, it's been about $300 a foot, I would say, on these full garage conversions, and that seems a little high. Like our average on our single family house renovations on a flip we're doing has been about $65 to $70 a square foot in our normal renovations, and that would include reconfiguring, et cetera. But going through plans, and I'm including our soft costs, so planning, permitting, and building, we're at around that $300 a foot number, maybe a little bit more.
What's the front end cost for somebody, and just a ballpark, we're not going to hold you to it. Somebody says, damn, I own my own house, I should do this on, right? What's the review? Like, just to get it where somebody gives you the thumbs up, like, here's the review, here are the plans, before, get to the point where it's quote, shovel ready, for lack of a better word. What does somebody have to spend, you think, to get shovel ready to?
For sure. So absolutely. So I would say a couple of things. So if you have a property already, you already own it, and you're considering adding an ADU, I would first suggest a feasibility study. So there are a lot of groups out there that know these inner workings of your local laws, and for a couple $1,000, you can pay them and they'll do a full review of your lot. They'll come out, they'll measure, and they'll look at all the zoning laws, setbacks, et cetera. And they'll give you this report for you to read and say, hey, based off of all the research we've done, we think you can do X, Y, and Z here. You can convert your garage, you can make it X big, whatever. And now you have this understanding of what it is you're doing. And then from there, you can have an architect now go and start to draw up plans. And the way that's going to work is you retain an architect. They're usually going to need a retainer up front. And to get an ADU from start to finish, it's going to cost you probably anywhere from $8,000 to $16,000, and then factor in some permitting fees depending on your local ordinance. Factor maybe an extra 5 to 10 for that, and then you have building costs on top of that. So I would say that's a rough number, and I'd say maybe give or take an extra 20% either way on either side of that. But I'd say that's probably a rough ballpark for people to understand. And the one thing too, I really want people to take from this is, all right, let's say it costs $150,000 all in to convert your 2-car garage, right? Let's just use this number as $150,000, but that can generate you $1,500 a month in rent. And in today's rental environment, that's probably low. That's low for San Diego. That's probably low for Seattle. Well, you'd have spent $150,000 to create $100 or $1,500 a month where else can you get that kind of a return?
Right.
You just can't. So like the math makes so much sense. And, it really is this awesome tool that has been out for a little while and will continue, I think, to only get more robust because like in San Diego, Tanya knows this. So we're somewhat geographically unique because we have the ocean to the west, we have Mexico to the south, we have a mountain range to our east, and we have Camp Pendleton, the big marine base, to the north. So we have this geographic insulated pocket that can't expand anywhere else. So you can't build out. So we have to build in and up. And so the density stuff in San Diego is so important to know and how it changes regularly, because this is how you maximize the value in a place like that. And to get returns like that in inner city is very hard to do.
I think it's so important that part of the reason that the podcast, let's be honest, guys, the podcast that we do are either because I need training material for my own team, or I just want to know myself and I'm just sharing it with all my friends. Right. So I think this is such a big opportunity for investors, for regular old homeowners, and for brokers who learn how to identify and understand the underwriting of these things. That's why we're doing this today. It is such a solution for this affordable housing situation, right? To add these extra units. I think I think you're crazy as an investor or a broker to not understand this as a deep dive for 2022. You really got to get in the game here, which is why we're even talking about this today as well, and why we continue to talk about it on Thursdays if you guys want to show up with us. But this is all super good stuff. If I was somebody, and I wasn't even investor minded, because that's most of the people listening here today, if you had a garage on your own property and you could spend, I don't know, $5,000 or $10,000 or whatever the number is. Maybe it's just that first step to get that. How much did you say a feasibility might cost? Like, what a learning experience to learn on your own property, even if you're not going to do it, that you understand. Then get that report, almost like a free, not free, because you're going to pay for the feasibility. Have the feasibility done on your own property as like an educational thing. You guys pay for education all over the place. Why not pay for it on your own property to get a feasibility, just to understand how it all works, to give you that heads up on what to look for, I would say, on other property. What a great way for a cheaper education. You guys get what I'm saying? If you have an existing property like that, whether you're an investor, and one of the topics we've been talking about is everybody take stock of what they own right now and go look and see where you can add the value, or do exactly what Derek, what we're talking about here. Where can you reconfigure certain units that you have? Where can you add value to what you already have? I think that investors are always, let me get that next deal. Let me get that next deal. And they need to take stock of what they already own, right? Because there might be some opportunities there. But let me say, so how much value, how is the appraisal work? In last question, then we're going to bolt here. So you've done a conversion of a garage, right? Let's just say, and it was $110,000, $150,000 to do that. Are you getting that pump in value back, or what?
Absolutely. And this is a great question. And I think especially early on in the ADU renaissance, that there was no data for appraisers to use to actually comp this and get the number. And even now it's very limited as to what there is out there. So let me tell you, we've been batting 1,000 on all of our underwriting and getting values. And actually, and every one of them, we went well north of what we needed and what we budgeted for. And I would say that it really comes down to a few things. I think it's arming the appraiser with as much information as possible. And so anyone listening, I don't care if you're an agent, investor, whatever, meet the friggin' appraiser on site. You want to develop a relationship with this person. You want them to see you and shake your hand and eye to eye. I can't tell you how many appraisers I've met on site where it's like, oh, hey, you went to X college, so did I. Or, hey, you're a baseball fan, and you just connect on a different level. And I'm not saying that that's the reason for getting values where we want, but it helps. And if you can show anecdotal evidence as to why the numbers are supposed to be where they're supposed to be, it really helps. So let me give you an example. In our appraisal packet, what we'll do is we'll bring a copy of our existing footprint of the property and then the renovated one. So assuming like on this duplex example, right, we reconfigured both the front house and the existing back house. We showed them an existing and then a renovation floor plan, and they went inside and they got to see it, but they got to see the changes that were made. We showed them, we make a full list of every single upgrade. So keep really good notes on what you're putting in the property. And I mean like buzzwords, like, right. So if you're putting in a travertine tile, like I like to use like, all right, like imported Calcutta blank countertops or whatever. And I literally list all this out and I make it look really robust for the appraiser. You know, we'll show them how much money that we put in the project. Sometimes that we think it's warranted. Sometimes we don't. It just depends like on that scenario, but we'll bring them comps. And what I've been doing is what you should not do is only bring the comps that you want the appraiser to see. I bring those, but I found I get way more credibility with these men and women if I bring the ones that are the elephant in the room, the ones that maybe aren't showing the value that we want, because they're going to see that too. And if you only show them the ones that are only supporting the value you're looking for, it kind of feels a little sleight of hand and not very above board. So I like to get it out in the open and say, hey, look, here's a comp A. And I don't think it's quite comparable because of X, Y, and Z, but I know you're going to see it when you do a search because it's data all of us can see. But here are the other ones. And what I like to do now is if I'm converting 2 units to a 3, I'm bringing them 3-unit comps and I'm showing them the triplexes that were already there that have sold. And the beauty about getting a permitted ADU, at least for the most part in San Diego, you're getting its own address. And so with its own address, we'll get it verified with the United States Postal Service, and we'll do that before we have this appraisal. So we have a bona fide address with the USPS. And so now it's hard to not actually look at this as an actual 2-unit property versus a 1 or a 3-unit versus a 2, because you have all of these components there. And so
major nugget there, you guys. I've never heard anybody say that. If you can make sure you get your garage conversion its own address, right? That's
absolutely
huge. That is just for what you just described. So you can back into using comps with a triplex, like, or something like that. That's might be the biggest nugget today of the whole podcast, all the way at the end. Nice job.
Yeah, awesome. And then just keep in mind too, it's when you're running comps, and let's say you're underwriting on something like this, do not hesitate to pick up the phone. There are a lot of times if you talk to agents that have pending listings or whatever, they'll tell you, some of them, most of them won't, but for the most part, a lot of them are cool. They're like, hey, we're actually under contract 200K higher than list and this and that. So you're going to know you have this comp in like a week or 2 weeks when maybe someone else was too lazy, didn't pick up the phone. And now you know you're going to have this extra data to support your value. And so, it's all about just talking, developing the relationships and understanding the value. And as long as you do all these things, I don't see an issue with getting the value on the backside.
Good stuff, brother. Right on. That was a good one today. Good one. You should come join us sometime on a Thursday. That'd be fun. Every Thursday from 11:30 to 12:30, we have a meetup. It's just a Zoom link. We have people coming from California already. We have our friend Dante that comes, that does the boarding room style, buys big houses and all that stuff as his business model. But we have people coming from all over. Be free to show up sometime. We'll have to bug Tanya.
Yeah. Send me the info.
Yeah. Well, this is, I don't know about you guys, but if you have any follow-up questions, feel free to drop them below in the notes or on the YouTube notes or however that works. Joe can tell you how to do that. And we'll see if we can get those answered for you. And then you guys make sure you come to our Thursday, 11:30 Pacific time, 11:30 to 12:30. This is the kind of stuff we're talking about. Deep dug, not nuggets with people actually doing it. And like we said, if we don't have somebody there that knows what to do, we certainly know somebody that knows what to do. So, we can't thank you enough for joining us today and giving us this deep dive. We look forward to hearing about more of your successes. We didn't even cover your failures today. So you guys
A
will
lot
have
of
to
those. I have a lot of those. So that may take their own podcast. But remember, I'll leave everyone with this, right? Your success is built on the foundation of your failure, and you have to do it. You have to learn. You have to just get out there and take action.
That's right. I say fall forward, fail forward is the way to go. So good stuff today, guys. Thank you everybody for coming. Again, if you want to join our weekly roundtable meetup where we talk about these things, you just go on to meetup.com, look for Seattle Investors Club and grab the registration link there. It does not change every week. So it's the same link every week. You can literally copy and paste it into your calendar for 11:30 to 12:30 on Thursdays, so you don't miss it. It is recorded for members of Seattle Investors Club. That's an annual fee of $220 a year to join. I can guarantee you're going to get massive value out of that. Lots and lots of nuggets dropping. And we've started time stamping those, so you don't have to listen to the whole thing, and you can go to the parts that interest you the most. So we look forward to seeing you. And we look forward to seeing you guys, hopefully, on one of the Thursdays coming up. Tanya, thanks. Good one.
Thanks so much for having us on. It was really good. So many juicy pieces of info. Love it.
Good stuff. Joe, where can everybody find the details of today's show?
Yeah, all the show notes can be found, like Julie said, down below on the YouTube video. Or if you're wanting to head over to our website, you can do so by going to seattleinvestorsclub.com/156, and everything will be listed there as well. And lastly, I just wanted to make sure that Derek or Tanya, did you have any links or anything that you guys wanted to share where people can find you and follow you?
Yeah, absolutely. So I would love to share the nsdrei.org. That's the North San Diego investor group that I'm the president of. And we like a very similar model. And I just can't tell you how imperative it is to keep surrounding yourself with like-minded individuals. And it's like, look what happened here. Like, hopefully someone takes something from this and they apply it to their own business. Anyway, I'm going down the rabbit hole. Sorry, Joe. But yes, nsdrei.org. That's our investor model, our investor club. And if you'd like to check us out, you can just go to webuysandiego.com.
Awesome. Tanya, give us the digits.
I am realestategals.com. Part of an amazing team there. And just on Facebook, obviously Instagram, all the things. And I look forward to sharing anything I possibly can.
And if any of you guys ever need to reach me, I'm an open book, happy to help all of you. And I like personal connections, personal conversations. So text me at 206-910-2985 if you want to talk to me, and I'll call you back. All right. Happy holidays, everybody. Hey, Joe, can we ask everybody we would like a special holiday gift from you guys. That's right. I'm like a 13-year-old. I'm going to ask for it. We would love a 5-star review of our podcast if you guys feel like giving us a nice holiday gift here at Seattle Investors Club. We would thank you for it. Hopefully you've enjoyed our show here over these last couple of years. We've certainly enjoyed hanging out with you guys. So happy holidays. Over and out. See you guys.
Thanks for listening to the Seattle Investors Club podcast. If you have questions that you'd like to have answered on the show, shoot us an email at info@seattleinvestorsclub.com. Now go out, take that action, and build that real estate business. Thanks for listening.